Hello everyone, it's Will JV and Dawson.
And my name is Aaron Woodman, and we want to welcome you back to our second episode of the Politik podcast. The first episode, we talked about, we gave a general introduction of ourselves. We talked about why civic engagement and voting is important and how you can become more civically involved. In this episode, we're going to talk more about how you can be educated on different political issues happening in your community, the political candidates running, and also how you can run for public office as well. So we're going to go more in depth with our own experiences and knowledge with those things, so that you can become a more educated voter in those things as well. So to start off, we want to give you some information about why civic engagement education is important and what it means to us. So, Jamie, why don't you start off by explaining what it means to you and why it's important?
Yeah, for sure. So civic engagement, definitely the word engagement is involved. When we're talking about civically, we're basically talking about anything related to civil matters in your community. So whether it's running for office, voting, volunteer work, getting involved with nonprofit organizations, or basically anything that is contributing to making your community a better place. To me, that is what civic engagement is. And voting is definitely a part of that. And I do believe, as we mentioned in the last podcast, the importance of voting. When we do vote and when we do voice our opinions and when our voices are heard, we're able to communicate that with our leaders who are in the area who make changes, to actually make changes in our favor.
Yeah, of course. And civic engagement education means that you are becoming more informed about what issues are happening in your community and understanding what you can do to help resolve those issues as well. And that's important because if there's an issue that you're passionate about, you want to understand how I can become a contributing member in my society that I live in today. Because at the same time, if there's something going on and you don't know what resources are out there that you can take advantage of to essentially resolve those issues, then that problem is going to get perpetuated. It's going to continue to get even bigger, and if we don't work on addressing it, then it's not going to get solved here too. And I also know that civic service and civic engagement, it can get very complicated for certain people, and we want to make sure that we give you the necessary information so that this won't be a complicated process and that it can be something that you can be more involved into as well. So we want to dive deeper into how you can become more educated about political issues happening in society too. One of the ways that I stay on top of being more educated on political issues is watching the news and reading news articles that talk about certain issues happening, whether it's housing, whether it's healthcare, education, infrastructure. I use that as a way to just gain some background information about what's going on and what are people doing about it, what are people saying about it, so that I can understand the context behind it too. Another way is also talking with people as well, talking with people who are experiencing those issues too. I want to understand what are they going through, see what help they need, and figure out if there's something I can do to help them out in the best way that I can. And if not, just listen to them and just know that there are people who really need those resources. They really need help trying to get those issues resolved as well. And also another thing too is just listen to different podcasts, listen to different radio shows too, who give more discussion, give more analysis, and talk with different leaders or community members who are experiencing those issues too, so that I understand what they are going through and what they are doing to resolve those issues as well. So those are ways that I stay informed, I stay up to date, especially on the local issues that are happening here today.
Yeah, I think for the most part, you pretty much hit the nail on the head in terms of how to get involved. I know for me personally, it's very much the same thing. It starts with you understanding that you want to be more involved in your community. And then once you have that mentality that you want to be involved, then you start showing up at different events. That would lead to maybe going to the City of Utica website. Or if you're not in this area, going to your local city or your local town's website and just figuring out what events are going on in that area, what particular dates, and then just showing up to those events. And when you're there, you just network with people. We all figure out what it is that we really want to do. Sometimes later on, as you're actually showing up to these events, you may speak to somebody that may present you with an opportunity or give you news about something that you didn't know before. And then basically from there, it just kind of leads you to the next step of getting more involved. And then before you know it, like, you're fully in depth with it. And it's basically a starting reference to just kind of go out, get involved. There are podcasts. If you have any social media platforms, if you have any podcast streaming services, there's documentaries you can watch on streaming services or on TV, books in the library, there's websites, there's reels, there's, you name it, like, it's all over the place. The news on your radio, you could easily just turn that on, like, every day. Maybe for like the first 20 minutes when you wake up, you're getting ready, turn on the news. You can hear kind of like what's going on, the local issues in your area. And then if there's anything that resonates with you and you want to kind of get more in depth with it, then from that point, you could just kind of like jump more into it from that point.
Yeah, the networking thing is critical too, because there are people out there who I've talked to and I network with that I've like I've never even heard before, and that just expands my knowledge, expands my curiosity, and it also shows that when we do network with each other, that we are working together as a group and as a community to solve these issues too. And this brings up the point about different political and civic service groups who are working to address specific issues as well too. And those groups are important because we can't solve issues by ourselves. It's a hard thing to do. Like, if I wanted to solve climate change all by myself, I could, but I can't. It's not an individual effort. It's a collective effort that we all have to work towards doing. And I know that's just an example of a different issue, but that just shows that we all have to come together. We all have to work together to know that if we want an issue solved, we have to work as a group. And I know that there are like different like nonprofits and for-profits and different volunteer groups out there who are working to address those issues too. And the way that you can become more informed about it is, like, of course, networking with people who like tell you that I'm a part of this group too. You should check this out. You should like, I see that you're passionate about education. Here's a group that's focused on education, on making sure that we have more resources for students, for example, too. So if that's something that you're passionate about, you should definitely check out this group, check out their website, talk to more members too. That's a way of you understanding, like, is this group for me? Is this a group that I belong in too? Because you can definitely like try different groups out and see which ones you fit in the most. And if you pick a group that definitely fits your interests and a group that you're comfortable being in, then you can like join the group. You can work together. You can know that that group is going to work to get that issue solved, and that you all have a collective interest in mind here too. And what I mentioned in the first episode about like volunteering at different events too, that's also a good opportunity to even ask like the leaders who are in charge of putting that event together, as well as the leaders of the organization, more about what they do, what their missions are. See if those missions and values align with what you're passionate about too. That's a way of like doing some research and understanding who you want to be associated with, who you want to spend your time and energy with, because of course it matters a lot. So you want to make sure that when you're deciding which political group or civic service group that you want to be a part of, you have to do some research. You can go to their website if they have a website. You can talk with their leaders. You can talk with their members. You can talk with anyone that the group has worked with before to see what they think about the organization. And so the first thing I do when I want to educate myself about political candidates running for office is to check the primary sources. So that includes checking out their campaign website, their social media pages, because that is where they are directly telling the voters who they are, why they're running, and what their platform is about. So when I go to the website, I check to see their bio. I check to see their bio. I want to see who they are, and then I want to see why they're running it. And then I want to see what issues that they have. They usually have different tabs on their website that list those things out. So I do that to get some background information, get some context, so that when I do go to different political events and public events out there, I get some information about who they are and think about what questions do I want to ask them too. I want to look at their issues. If they have some information about healthcare and they explain what they want to do to reform the healthcare system, and if there's anything in there that I want to follow up with them on, I want to ask, okay, you said this on your website. Can you please expand on this component of your policy idea here too? That just shows that I did some research on you so that you can expand on your platform. And if there's also something in their platform that's not mentioned, but I still want to see if they know about it, I want to ask them as well. And if they say, oh, I do know about that, or no, I don't know anything about that at this time, but I will get back to you on that. So I always check the primary sources first, the campaign website and their social media pages. And then when it comes to the secondary sources, that includes news articles about them. If they did an interview with a journalist where they answered their questions as well, then I get some more information on more issues that they think about too, and more about who they are as well. And then also going to different political events like candidate forums, debates, those kind of things.
Yeah, for sure. I know the forums are very important because that's where you're going to really learn the most you can about a political candidate. I mean, you may be able to read one thing, but when you go to these public events where they're speaking, that's an opportunity for you to really get to know your political candidate. Really ask them questions that they're probably not even prepared to answer, so that way you can see how they would react or respond. You could actually read body language, you could hear tonality, all of that stuff, and really get a clue whether or not they're actually selling you information or they're being passionately truthful about what they're talking about. So I would say the forums is important. A lot of times they'll be on interviews, radio stations. You could tune into that. If you are following a political candidate, basically you could follow them from beginning to end. You'll be able to see scheduled appointments. Usually they'll publicize everything. So if they are having meetings, if they are having interviews, if they are going to these forums or these events and stuff like that, they're going to show face, then they'll typically publicize it. So that's definitely an opportunity to. So I guess that would segment into the next question, where it's just what are the roles? You have common counsel, you have counsel at large. So what are the other positions and the roles that are played out in the local government hierarchy?
Yeah, so in addition to the common council, where they're the legislative branch, they make the laws on a local level. Mm-hmm. You have the mayor's office too, where they're the executive branch. They're the ones executing the laws. They're the ones putting the policy in place and making sure that it's executed properly too. They're the ones in charge of the city that they were elected to govern. When it comes to other branches of government, on the county level, there's a county executive too. That's the person in charge of operating the whole county. There's also a county district attorney too as well. So that's in charge of the court system. They're the ones that are in charge of prosecuting different cases. So if there's a crime that has occurred, they're the ones that are presenting evidence to prove that the crime occurred and to prosecute the offenders too. There's also different other local positions too. There's county clerk. They're the ones in charge of putting the documents together, like official public records together. There's the sheriff too, like the county sheriff, like in charge of the law enforcement in the whole county too, as well. And there's also like the judicial system, like there's a city court judge, there's like Supreme Courts that happen on a local level too. Like they're the ones that are interpreting the laws and any disputes that happen too. Because I know like the U.S. Supreme Court, like they get appointed by the president, but when you go on a small scale, like when you have like family court judges, you have like state Supreme Court judges, they're the ones that actually have an election. They're the ones running a campaign too. So that one's different from like the national like U.S. Supreme Court too. So those local positions, those are critical for people to know about so that they can understand what each person's power are and what they can do.
So let's say you wanted to run for one of these positions. What would be the first thing that you would do?
Well, there's three things to consider when running for public office. One is self-confidence. You have to believe in yourself. You have to know that if you're going to run for office, you're going to believe that you're going to win. You believe that you have the message, that essentially my message is better than my opponent's message too. So you have to be able to persuade people to believe in you, persuade people to understand that you are the best choice to represent them in government. So you have to display that self-confidence in people. The second thing is also to have a consistent message, to be able to stand by what you're saying. Essentially, you don't want to go back and forth with different policy issues and not be consistent and explain like why you believe in them too. Like in addition with the self-confidence thing, you also have to be persuasive and consistent that you understand the issues that are happening here and that you're not flipping back and forth on them. And the third thing is also to have a network of supporters too. It's not just like, oh, I know a few people who support me in general. It's a matter of ensuring that they will support you all the way through. It's not like making sure that, oh, I support you, but I also support your opponent too. In that case, then you're gonna have to make sure that you get them on your side. You wanna ensure that if you're gonna run for public office on whatever level that you decide to run in, that you have that network of support, which is why we say that it's important for you to go out and go to these political events and talk with the different leaders and community members out there to like ask them questions and also talk about what you think could be done to resolve those issues too, because that is essentially building up your network so that when you do want to run for office and you want their support, that it's guaranteed that they're going to support you and not the other person as well. So those are like three considerations that is important to keep in mind when you want to run for public office.
And let's say we have all three of those intact, right? So now we want to run. Like there's a process where we have to collect signatures, right? And you actually did that for a recent candidate. So like, can you talk about the process of like gaining signatures and getting your name on the ballot and being an official candidate and stuff like that, like what that process looks like?
Yeah, so of course, depending on what public office that you run for, the signature requirement is going to either be high or low. In this case, for the congressional race, it was 1,250 signatures. That's the minimum requirement. But the thing to keep in mind is it has to come from certified people, certified political party members in the race that you're running for. So for example, like Dr. Fleming Harris, who I collected petition signatures for, he was running in the Democratic primary election. So that means he needed to get 1,250 signatures from certified Democratic voters who lived in the 22nd Congressional District. And if you don't get that signature requirement, then you don't make it on the ballot. You want to make sure that you have the support from community members, community leaders, political leaders who are also knowledgeable about the petition process too and are willing to ask people to sign the petition and advocate for the candidate that you are seeking to get on the ballot as well.
So what he's saying is basically like you want to get your name on the ballot. The ballot is, for those who may not know, is the sheet of paper that you actually bubble in your vote when it's time to actually vote. There's a process in order to even get your name on the ballot. That way you're recognizable. This is the process. The first thing you would do, obviously, you'll think about it. He mentioned the key 3 points that you really have to ponder on and think about, make sure that you have all of that intact and that you are really ready to run. Because once you do get involved, it is a very big commitment. So you have to make sure that when you do announce it, you already have like your team in place. You'll have everything in order. You have a structure. Then the next step will be to collect signatures, right? And get your name on the ballot. And then once your name is on the ballot, then you run a campaign, right? So what does a campaign kind of look like?
Yeah. So of course, you get on the ballot. That's great. That means now you can tell people
Now you're official.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is at least for New York State, we are in a closed primary election, which means that if I'm a Democratic voter, I can only vote for whoever is in the Democratic primary race. Like if there's someone running in the Republican primary race who seems interesting to me, and I would like to have them as an option in the general election, like just so I can have some options, like there's some people who might think that way too. But the thing to keep in mind is that if you are registered as a Democrat, you can only vote for whoever is in the Democratic primary. Same thing as a Republican too. If you're a Republican, you can only vote for whoever's running in the Republican primary race, as well as every other political party too. So that's important to keep in mind when it comes to primary elections in New York State, is that it's a closed primary. When it comes to the general election, you can vote for whichever candidate you want, regardless of what political party that they are part of.
Right. And
that's important, like especially in the primary season. Like if I'm a Democrat, but I'm paying attention to what the Republican candidates are saying, and they seem interesting, I want to learn more about them. Just keep in mind that if you're still registered as a Democrat, you can't vote for them. And same thing as an independent as well, and a Republican as well. If there's like an opposing political candidate that you're interested in, that you would like to vote for, then you have to change your party registration.
Gotcha.
So that's important to keep in mind.
So example, right? You're running as common council.
Yeah.
Democrat, right?
We'll
Democrat, we'll use that as an example. So you're running as a Democrat. I'm a voter. I want to support Aaron because he's running as common council, and he's running in the Democratic Party line. So he's running against Mary and Joe, right? They're also running as a common council member in the same ward as him, on the same party line as him. So in order for me to vote for him, I would have to register as a Democrat in order to vote for Aaron. Let's say, somebody comes to my door and they ask me these questions. Am I registered as a Democrat? Am I registered to vote, period, right? And what if I'm not? Like, you know what I mean? Or what if I'm unsure? Like, I don't know. Like, then what?
Yeah, so there's like two things. One, before like the petition drive starts, like you can ask you can go to the Board of Elections, like you can send an email to the Democratic Commissioner or the Republican Commissioner and ask, hey, can I please have the street list for the people that live in this district so that I know who to go to ask for signatures, so that there's some verified information. And
so you're not just walking blindly.
Yeah, you're not just like going off the house across the street and just hoping that they're registered to vote in the political party that your candidate's running in. You'll have that information. And then even if you don't have the list like immediately in front of you, but you like know in your head, like, I know that this person is a registered Democrat. If that voter says, I'm not sure, then what they can do is go to the New York State elections website, do like a quick voter search up. They can type in their name, the zip code, city, whatever it's asking there. And if their name pops up under this political party, then they know, okay, I know I know who I'm registered to vote for in this case.
And based on that, let's say that I am registered as a Republican or a no party affiliation, but you're running as a Democrat and I want to vote for you. Can I then change my party affiliation just so that I could vote for you?
Yes, but you have to keep in mind about the deadlines too, especially in the
Deadlines.
primary race too.
Okay.
Like say for example, this year the deadline to change your party enrollment would have been like in February.
Gotcha.
So, and that's why I say start early as you can, so
Right.
that if there's someone like you who is a registered Republican, but I'm very persuaded by your message and I do want to see you in office, so I will change my party registration from Republican to Democrat or Democrat to Republican. You'll just have to keep in mind what the deadline is for that, so that it's not too late to do that.
Yeah, so just being civically engaged, getting more involved. Part of that is knowing the important dates and deadlines. I just missed the opportunity to vote for Aaron in the primary election because the deadline has passed for me to change party affiliation. So that's a good example of, why civic engagement is important. And let's say you do win, and now you are declared the winner of your position that you're running for, right? So now what happens?
Essentially, when you win the Democratic or Republican primary, that's where now you have that backing. You're not they're not constricted by the primary election. That all those resources will come to you from your own political party. You'll start to have more staff. You'll start to have more fundraising resources. You'll start to have some more outreach that they can use to promote you and essentially continue to get your name out there too. Another thing that's also important when it comes to educating yourself about political candidates is to go to the events that they're at and speak to them directly. So one thing that is important is asking them questions to expand on their platform and talk more about, just get some clarification on what they're about. So you hosted a mayoral forum back in the fall called Voteless People's Hopeless People. That was where all four of the mayoral candidates came together. They talked about why they were running and talked about their perspective on issues happening in Utica, and then they interacted with the audience. This forum essentially had questions where they wrote down their questions and then they gave it to you so that you can ask the candidates.
Right.
So when it comes to asking questions, how do you determine which questions are appropriate to ask the candidates?
As Aaron mentioned, I did do a mayoral forum, and I had index cards. When somebody came in and signed in, we would give them an index card, I think one or two of them, and then we told them to write a couple of questions down. And then I would read it as it was time for Q&A segment of the actual forum. If it was just not a question, or if it was redundant, or if it was something that wasn't even legible, or if it was something that was completely maybe disrespectful, I would avoid that question.
Keep that in mind when you're asking questions. You want to be straightforward, you want to get to the point, you want to make sure that it seeks to educate people. And one more thing about this as well, you can also ask questions that are going to challenge the candidate's platform and their beliefs. So in this case, if you want to say, so I heard you say that you support policy A, but one thing that can be an issue with policy A is that it could cause more inequity in this area, or it could cost more money to the taxpayers. What's your response to that? That's you're challenging them. You're getting them to think on their feet. You're getting them to think about the counter arguments and how they respond to it. And it's up to you to think about, okay, did they respond to that properly? Are they thinking about all the options here? So that's one way. If you want to challenge their political beliefs on a certain thing, you can do that without turning it into a got you moment.
Right. I think the forums is great because you are able to actually meet with your political candidate. You could really see their personality based on just them presenting, them speaking, them answering questions and stuff like that. So in conclusion, we would like for you all who are viewing and who are listening, let us know, what are some things that you would like to see? We wanted the first few episodes to be more informative, just to kind of give you some insight, give you some education on the political process, civic engagement, stuff like that. But as we kind of get more in depth and more into this, we would like to potentially invite people on to the podcast so we could talk about maybe current matters, things that are currently happening. And the whole purpose of this is to educate. So until next time, I'm Will Javian Dawson, and
Aaron Whitman.
thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to the next time around. Take care.
Thank you so much.